on page 340.
Okay.
Parsha
300 and?
340.
Oh, 340.
Okay?
Yeah.
Good. Probably going to fall. Just put it like this and shrug. Good morning, Brana.
She can't hear.
Oh, she can't hear well. Can you hear well now?
Can you hear me now?
Like Verizon commercial. Hi, Brana. Can you hear me now? Very good. Okay. Yes. Good morning, Chai Rivka.
Chabad is having a prayer session.
It's having a what?
Chabad is having a prayer at this very moment for the last healing session for Menucha Rachel, Bakila Elka.
Oh.
I did dedicate the class
Yes.
to her healing.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
also my son's your side tonight, we dedicated to that.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so let's dedicate the class for a refuah for Menucha Rachel Bat Gila Elka, okay, and also the Eloi Nishmat David
Ben Moshe Halevi.
David ben Moshe Halevi.
We do also
Okay.
through Michaela
Chana Bat Sarah. Yes.
How about for new baby?
She has a new baby.
Thank God. Well, that's just a mazel tov. Thank God. There's no. Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. Actually, let's say it to Tehillim together for Menucha Rachel Bat Gila Elka. Okay. I'm sorry.
They're doing Perek Vav for her, I think, in Tehillim, because it's by the age or something like that.
Okay, so that's more of a Chabad thing. We'll just do the Tehillim that we normally do when we're asking Hashem to help. Okay, so I'll say it slowly. People say along with me.
Which one?
Okay, we're gonna do Kuf Lamed. Right? Esa Shir Lamalot, Esa Einai, El Heharim, Me'ayin, Yavo, Ezri. Ezri, Me'im Adonai, Osei, Shamayim, Va'aretz. Al Yitain, Lamot Raglecha, Al Yanum, Shomrecha, Hine, Lo Yanum, Velo Yishan, Shomer, Yisroel. Adonai, Shomrecha, Adonai, Tzilcha, Al Yad, Yeminecha, Yomam, Hashemesh, Lo Yakeka, V'yareach, V'alayla. Adonai, Yishmorcha, Mikol, Ra, Yishmor, Es, Nafshecha. Adonai, Yishmor, Seischa, Uvoecha, Me'ata, V'ad, Olam. Now I'll say Achenu Kol Beit Yisrael, which is our brothers and sisters in all Israel, wherever they are. Hashem should protect them, yes or amen. Achenu Kol Beit Yisrael, Hanusim B'Tzar B'Shiv B'Honda B'Yam B'Mei B'Yabasha, Hamakim Rachim Aleim Yotzim Yisrael Levachem Efei La'or Meshiv L'Gula, Hashta V'Agala Uvizman Kariv V'Nomar. Amen. Good. Okay. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe. Let's begin. Parshat Bo, page 340. Who'd like to lead off for us in Hebrew?
Ruthie.
ויאמר השם אל משה, בוא אל פרעה, כי אני הכבדתי את ליבו ואת לב עבדיו למען שהקיא אותותי אלה בקרבו. ולמען תספר באוזני בנך ובן בנך את אשר התעללתי במצרים ואת אותותי אשר שמתי דם בידיעתם, כי אני השם.
Beautiful. In English, please. Hazel.
What is the beginning of as this is?
Page 341. No, on the top over there.
Oh, that one. Oh, I see. It's
Yeah.
closer. Hashem said to Moses, "Come to Pharaoh, for I have made his heart and the heart of his servants stubborn, so that I can put these signs of mine in his midst, and so that you may relate in the ears of your son and your son's son, that I made a mockery of Egypt, and my signs that I placed among them, that you may know that I am Hashem."
Good. So a couple of things are a little bit strange about this first pasuk. Hashem said to Moses, "Come to Pharaoh, For I have made his heart and the heart of his servant stubborn, so that I can put these signs of mine in his midst. Any issues we have with this pasuk?
It should be go.
Okay, good. First of all, why is it come to Paro? It should be go to Pharaoh. Good. Any other issues?
Well, if his heart is stubborn, then he doesn't have free will. So,
Okay, good. Right. So good. Number 2. Right. I have made his heart and the heart of his servant stubborn. So it seems that his free will has been taken away. If his free will has been taken away, then why should he be held accountable and punished for that? Good. Amy?
And why would Hashem want to put these signs knowing that they're negative? Why would he do that?
Okay. Why is God putting the signs over here? Good. And I have one more question over here. Come to Pharaoh, actually in the Hebrew, keep, because I have made his heart and the heart of his servant stubborn. We put in the word because instead of for. Right? It seems to be a little bit strange. It seems to be an exercise in futility. Go to Pharaoh, because I have made his heart and the heart of his servants stubborn. Okay? So that I can put these signs of mine in his midst. Right? If his heart is stubborn and the heart of his servants is stubborn, that's not a reason to go, that's more of a reason to not bother going at all.
Then can't we say, why does Hashem need anything of this? Why can't Hashem just do it?
Okay. A more general question, right, that Dov is bringing up, is this: if you're God and you want to take the children of Israel out of Egypt, how would you do it? All options are open to you because you are God. Okay? So what would you do? How would you do it? Put aside what we read in the Torah. You're God. How would you do it?
Just take it out.
How would you just take them out?
I would put them under a spell so that they were asleep or something.
Okay.
And then everybody leaves.
Yeah, great. Right? You know, the immobilizer gun, right? So you might say that we're getting ahead of ourselves. They didn't have immobilizer guns then. But they did. Because we'll soon see, we'll get to there today, Makat Choshech, the plague of darkness, immobilized them. According to the sages, for the first half, the first 3 days, they were immobilized. So therefore, why don't we just cut to the chase and take them out, immobilize them? Don't forget about plagues 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Immobilize them, they're frozen, and Hashem says, children of Israel, go. And everything is fine. Right?
How did the Jews from Iraq and Iran and all the Middle Eastern countries just leave? They left in hordes of people. They just left. How was that? Wouldn't it be a similar thing that they just picked themselves up and went?
Well, they weren't enslaved.
No, they weren't enslaved. I realized that. But
Right.
they all just sort of left.
Yeah.
Were they
Yeah.
not kicked
Yeah,
out?
but Egypt, nobody escaped
No,
from
they
Egypt,
left.
right?
Yeah,
That was what
but
they were doing.
Egypt was more like the Iron Curtain, right, in our days than these other countries. So what's clear is, right, and if we're going to basic questions, right. So what do we celebrate Pesach time?
Springtime.
Right, God took us out of Egypt, but God put us into Egypt. So don't put us in, don't take us out, and we'll skip the matzah.
No.
Right? Right? You know, I think there's a consensus on that one. Right? Right? So clearly, God's purpose here was not simply to take us out of Egypt. If he wanted to do that, there were far easier ways to do it. Now, did we mention this last week, that the greatest mistranslation that we have? Did we mention this last week? I'm not sure if we did. Right? What is the quote, the expression of leaving Egypt in English?
Let my people go.
Let my people go. So first of all, that's incomplete. Second of all, it's incorrect. Besides that, it's perfect. Okay? Right? What does the pasuk actually say? Shalach et ami
Send out.
vayavduni. So first of all, it's incomplete. Right? Let my people go is a wonderful call for freedom, right? But it doesn't say that. It says, let my people go so they can serve me. Right? That doesn't go over so well in the Western world. Right? Freedom, yes. Serving God, not quite as appealing. So the pasuk says, Shalach et ami, but it doesn't say, let my people go. What does shalach et ami? Send my people. So that already is very, 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 very instructive. The issue is not for us to be simply taken out, to go out. The issue was that Paro would send us out. Why? Why would God want Paro to send us out instead of letting the people go, actually sending them out, playing an active role in this deliverance? Why?
Well, I mean, then he has control and he has the power. He doesn't have just a stubborn way or stubborn heart.
Okay.
He actually has to do it with his own.
And why do we want him to do it?
Because
Great, he needs to be active. Linda?
Because we want him to recognize Hashem as Hashem.
Okay. What were you going to say?
what was I going to say? Well, that way he's endorsing their leaving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Paro was the world power. This is a time of polytheism, of belief in all these different gods. There's the water god, there's the fire god, there's the mountain god, there's the sun god, you name it, there's the god. And these gods battle one another, and whoever is the strongest one, right, he wins the battle that day until another one of the gods then moves forward, and he then... The idea was this was meant to be a true shalom aleichem, a true welcome introduction to the world, to the Jewish people, and to the non-Jewish world about who and what God is. And it's very interesting. Rabbi Sachs writes about this. Whenever we have these contradictions, these seeming contradictions of science and religion, those are contradictions that take place almost on a polytheistic level. Meaning, the difference between many gods and God is that the many gods are part of this world. There's the wind god, there's the mountain god, there's the sun god, there's the water god, there's the fire god. They're all within this world. And therefore, when you find things in this world, so then that can seemingly refute God. But when we understand in monotheism, it's not that instead of many there's one. That's true, but that's not the main idea. The main idea is that God is not part of this world. God is not within this world. Actually, the way Chazal say is Hashem is Mekomo Shel Olam. The world is not the place where God is. God is the place where the world is. The world is not the place where God is. God is the place where the world is. God is Mekomo Shel Olam. He is the place of the world. He is completely above, beyond. He's not in this world. So when you're bringing questions of science against God, you're in this world. You bring questions that are in this world. It doesn't get to God who is beyond this world. The idea of the makot that we're going through, the plagues that we're going through, that God put everyone through, was to clearly illustrate His absolute mastery. And that's why the first 3 makot, actually the verses are very clear in describing 3 stages of what was meant to be taught by these plagues. It's worth it to take a quick look. When God introduces the first plagues, just one second. Take a look on page 326, 327. This is the first plague, blood. Verse 17. Ko amar Hashem. This is what Hashem says. Bazot teida. With this you will know. Ki ani Hashem. With this you will know that I am God. What were the first, and that's the introduction to the first 3 plagues. What was the first plague? Blood. How did that show that I am God? What did they worship? The Nile. Here the Nile is being negated. Right? This is your God. I'm turning. Why do they worship the Nile? That was their life source. Irrigation, that was their life source. I'm turning this into a symbol of death. Second plague was what? Number 2 was Svardeya, the frogs. Once again, the Nile, the river, which had been for them a source of life, turned into a source of, at best, nuisance, and probably a lot worse than that. Third plague, lice. Remember there, even the sorcerers were unable to duplicate it, and even they admitted, Etzba Elokim Hi. What is this? The finger of Elokim, of God. Okay. That's what the first 3 makot came to show. As the verse read, Ki ani Hashem. Now look at page 332, 333. Introducing, now we know on Pesach, right, when at the Seder we're dropping out a little bit of wine for each of the plagues, and then Rabbi Yehuda, what does he do? He lumps them into categories. It's not just 10 plagues, it's Datzach, right? Adash Ba'achav. Now that's not just a simple way of remembering it. They are 3 distinct categories. Page 332, when he's introducing the second group, what does God say? Verse 18, someone take that for us in English, please. And on that day?
And on that day I shall set apart the land of Goshen, upon which my people stands, that there shall be no swarm there, so that you will know that I am Hashem in the midst of the land. Oh,
so it's not that you'll know that I am Hashem anymore. Now what's being taught? I'm Hashem where? In the midst of the land. What was this 4th plague? The wild animals. What do wild animals do? They swarm, they wild out in all directions. Yet they only affected the Egyptian areas, did not touch the Jewish areas. The 5th plague, which was Dever, which was this epidemic that hit the animals. Right? And then what happened? Right? Actually fascinating. Look on page 334, verse 7. 335, verse 7. After this happened, right? Let's go to verse 6. Hashem carried out the word that the next day, and all the livestock of Egypt died, and of the livestock of the children of Israel, not one died. Paro sent and beheld. Stop there. Cover it over. What do you think the king of the nation wants to do afterwards? He's sending out to find out what?
How come they didn't die?
Well, we don't know that. We found the Egyptians' flocks were decimated. What will he send out to find out? The damage. That's not what he sends out to find out. Behold, the livestock of Israel, not even one had died. That's what he wanted to find out. Was God truly the God where? Bekerev haaretz, in the midst of the land. The gods, small g, that they knew of were indiscriminate. Right? When there's a flood, and everyone gets washed away. When the sun is parching down, everyone. There's no lines, fine lines that are being drawn. And lastly, the sixth plague is boils. Right? Once again, they threw up the ashes that came down and there was boils. Now that spreads around indiscriminately, at least it should, but it didn't. Who did it hit? Only the Egyptians and not any of the Jews. This was the message, the second of the lessons that were being taught by the second group, by the Adash. Let's go see now the introduction of the seventh plague, which is introducing the third set. Just 1 second. Yes, just let me find the pasuk that I'm looking for. Oh, here it is. Pasuk Yud Dalid. Right? 14, page 336, 337. Someone take that first in English, please. 14. Eileen, you have that?
For this time I shall send all my plagues against your heart, and upon your servants and your people, so that you shall know that there is none like me in all the world.
Okay, a different introduction. So the first one was, you'll know that I'm Hashem. Second was, you know that I'm Hashem where? In the midst of the land. Now that we're introducing the Ba'achav, the last group, that you'll know there is none like me in all the world. Right? That this is not just, the strongest God. This is the God that supersedes. Right? It's not the strongest God within the system. It is the God that is above and beyond the whole system and is controlling everything. Now, what happened over here? What was this plague? Right? It was a very strange plague.
Fire yourself here as hail.
Right? It was hail, right? With, take a look on the bottom there on the bottom of 337:24. There was hail and fire flaming amid the hail. Very heavy, it never been seen. The hail struck the entire land. Now, this is fascinating. 27 on page 338, 339. Paro sent. Rabbi Yishlach Paro sent the Yikron, he called Moshe and Aaron v'yomer lehem chatati hapam. I have sinned. Hashem hatzadik v'ani v'ami harishaim. God is the tzaddik, and I and my nations are the rishaim, are the evil ones. Now, in this polytheistic world, right, so I might have bet on the wrong horse if my God got beaten. But there's not this concept of tzaddik, righteous, rishaim, evil. This is the first time that these words are being introduced. Why? Why now? Why does Paro now realize that the lesson is hitting home about this God being above and beyond everything? What was unique about this plague that Paro now said, uses complete new terminology? God is the righteous one, Hashem is the righteous one, I and my people are the wicked ones. What's changed over here?
Fire, rain, and water usually wouldn't come at once.
Good, good. If we're talking about the battle of the gods, right? The battles of the gods, they just don't make allegiances. They don't say, hey, listen, fire God and the water God are going to partner up now, and we're going to have this hail fire coming down. That's not how it works. Either the water God is winning or the fire God is winning. But they don't coexist. They don't partner. They don't join forces. At this point, Paro is starting to understand that this is truly Hashem. This is not the most powerful God with a small g. This is the capital G. That's what's happening over here. And what's interesting, so then Moshe makes it stop. Paro saw that the rain, I'm in 34, the hail, the thunder ceased, and he continued to sin, and he made his heart stubborn, he and his servants. Paro's heart became strong. He did not send out the children of Israel, as Hashem has spoken through Moshe. And it's interesting, that's where the Parsha ends, after 7, and then we have the last 3. So why is this being divided up? Okay? So, very often we divide 10 into 7 and 3, right? That's a whole Kabbalistic aspect, right? On the hand tefillin, we have 7 wraps around, and then we have 3, right? And in a Kabbalistic sense, we speak about there's 3 higher levels of God's dealing with the world, and the 7 more earthly levels. But on a very practical level, we reached a certain point here that Paro agreed, Paro understood, Paro accepted. And then what did he do again? Step back again. Came off again. At this point, it seems to be hopeless. If we got him to the point where he said God is righteous, and then he comes back off of there again, it seems to be hopeless. So our Parsha begins, Hashem said to Moses, come to Pharaoh. Not go to Pharaoh, come to Pharaoh. What does come to Pharaoh indicate? What feeling do we get from come to Pharaoh as opposed to go to Pharaoh?
That he's going with
Good.
Moshe.
I'm there. God is there. Right? You think it's futile? You think, and perhaps, it's getting a little intimidating over here, right? You don't have to worry. You're not going. You're coming. I'm right there with you. Right? And that is a very, very important lesson throughout. That wherever we go, it's never go, it's always come. Right? Hashem is there with us. 4, because I have made his heart and the heart of his servants stubborn. Meaning, you might say it's futile. Right? But why am I doing this? So I can put these signs in his midst. He hasn't learned yet. So I need you to go back again. I need there to be 3 more plagues here in order that he will understand. Now it's very, very interesting. This idea that I said before, which all the other Mepharshim speak about, it's very clear. It's explicit in the Psukim. The first 3 was that I am Hashem. Second 3 are I'm God in the midst of the land. Last 3 is there is no power like me. So that actually is what we say in the quintessential Jewish prayer. What is the Jewish prayer of all prayers? Shema Yisroel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. What are we saying there? We're saying these 3 stages that the world was meant to learn. What are they? Shema Yisroel. Not just hear, but listen, accept Israel, right? I can say, I hear you, but I'm not listening. Right? It means I'm not going to do it. I'm not taking it in. I'm not planning on doing it. Shema is to accept Hashem Elokeinu. So there is Hashem, there's belief in God, but that he is Elokeinu. He is our God. Elokim refers to God's power. So therefore he is not just this God that exists. He's not this creation God that then went off to do other things. He is Elokeinu. He is our God. He is involved. Where is he involved? Right here in the world and all that goes on with us. We've said before, there's the lesson of Shabbos and the lesson of Yom Tov. Shabbos teaches us belief in God. And Yom Tov means God's involvement in the world. So Shema Yisrael Hashem, that's the first three makot. Elokeinu, he is our God, he is involved. Right? When it came to Yitzhak, when it came to Har Sinai, when God made his introduction, what was his introduction? I am Hashem your God who took you out from the land of Egypt. Not I'm the God who created the universe. I'm the God who's involved with you, Mebeit Avadim, from the house of bondage. Involved not just on a national level, but also on a house, personal, family, individual level. So Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. He is one. He is unique. Ein kamoni ba'aretz. There is none like me in all of the land. So the lessons that were being taught by these plagues were lessons that we incorporate in our expression of belief, of faith. We are taking these three lessons of the Yetziat Mitzrayim and we are incorporating it. So you had asked, but we always have to have free will, right? Do we always have free will? Do we always have free will? Well, we do and we don't. It depends. It depends how we view the situation. Someone is very rude to me. I didn't have free will about how that person was going to treat me, but I do have free will in responding or not responding. So there's always an element of free will. But not every situation is a situation where there is free will about the situation. There's always free will about how I react. What will I do in this situation? That we always have our free will for. We don't have our free will for the situations. So some explain that in fact from the fifth plague and on, Paro's free will was taken away. It was no longer a test for him, would he acquiesce or not? It was no longer a test for him. And therefore it would follow then, according to that he won't be held responsible for saying no. He won't be held responsible for saying no because he had no choice, he had no free will. There are those that explain, and we've mentioned this before, that actually by God strengthening his heart, God was giving Paro the free will. Meaning, if the free will decision was, will I let the people go or not? That's one free will decision Paro could be making. Now, if he keeps getting slammed, and his nation keeps getting slammed, and his country is being destroyed, he might make a free will decision to cut his losses, and I'm going to send the people out. That's not what God wanted. Right? If he wanted us out, remember, immobilize. Easier ways of doing it. What did God want? What was God looking for Paro to decide? I'm sorry? Right. Do I accept God and his mastery of this world? Do I bend my will to conform with God's will? Am I humbling myself before God? But there's a problem over here. How can we determine if that's why Paro is going to send the people, or if he's sending the people because he wants to cut his losses and doesn't want his country to be destroyed anymore. The way that we can determine that is by strengthening his heart, taking away the normal fear that he would have for the next plague that's coming. Once we've taken away that fear, we've now isolated his free will on, do I want to listen to God or do I not want to listen to God? So whereas without the strengthening of his heart, there's confusion. If he says, go, 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 is he saying go because I accept you, God? Or is he saying go because I've had enough? Right? But I'll be back to fight another day. Right? So the way to isolate what his motive for letting us go is to take away his natural fear that any person will be feeling at that point, strengthen his heart, let him no longer be afraid, and now he's deciding, do I want to let them go? Do I want to bow to God's will? Or do I not want to bow to God's will? It's fascinating. The word paro, when you read it backwards, what word does it spell? Look on page 340, back where you are now. The top line there. Paro. Ha'oref.
Stubbornness.
What is ha'oref? What is literally ha'oref? The back of the neck. Right?
That's what we're
Right?
supposed to be, right?
Right? And, right, that is a term that is used for, right, stubbornness. Am kishay oref, right? Now, the neck is the connection between the brain and the heart. Right? I forget which Willie Nelson, some country singer, has a song about the greatest distance, right, is from the head to the heart. Right? In other words, there's what we know and there's what we decide to do anyway. Right? Paro was the epitome of ha'oref, of this stubbornness, of knowing, right, repeatedly accepting, yes, 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 no, no, no. Each time, right, stepping back from it. Right? Now, all the Bali Musar point out that it's very easy to laugh at Paro and how silly it is and how he commits but goes back, commits and goes back. But there is also the Paro in us, right? That when things are not going well, when someone is sick, that's when we're giving that tzedakah. That's when we're coming and davening and we're saying the Tehillim. But when things are good, then we sort of lapse back into Mi Hashem. Exactly who is God. The story. Famous story, the person is driving along Manhattan and cannot find a parking spot. And he says, God, 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 if you'll give me a parking spot, that's it. I'll put on tefillin every day. And as soon as he says that, a car pulls out, oh, it's okay, God, I got it. Right? When we need it, right, we call out. Otherwise, right, we sort of check out. So there's a lot of paro in all of us. And paro is that ha'oref. Paro is that ha'oref. Now, just one
question.
Yes.
When Pharaoh at the end he let them go because at the end after the first death of the firstborn, he let them go. So then Hashem didn't harden his heart anymore. And
okay.
He all of a sudden let him because after that he ran away again. He ran after them again.
Yeah.
So I just don't know what happened then.
Yeah. So you're making an excellent point, Ruti, right? And it seems that there are two options. Either that God's name will be known and accepted by Paro bending, or by Paro's utter decimation. And when he was still refusing, then it came down to that decimation. But let's speak. Yes.
The thing that really bothers me the most about all of this is that there were conditions on their leaving. They were not just told to goodbye. They had like a 3-day something.
Okay, that's a good question.
This is what happens with every single story in here. That there's like a twist where there's some dishonesty, I feel like, involved.
Okay, so the Mefarshim, the commentators, I don't have across the those here, but they deal with what was the idea of the 3 days, right? What was this whole 3-day service in the wilderness and come back, right? So some take the approach that was the original plan, the original ask, but once Paro refused and refused and refused and refused, then that was no longer what was being, that was no longer on the table, right? And we understand that, right? You know, you make an offer, it's rejected. You know, look, we have this with the Palestinians and the Israelis. You know, Israel makes an offer. You know, Barak made an offer, and Omer made an offer, right? Which the Palestinians kept refusing. But next time they come back to the negotiating table, they want to use that as the starting point. And we say, no. That's not the starting point, right? So this was an offer, and that was the idea. But once he refused, then this became all out, an all out struggle, right? Another approach is that once Paro wouldn't even agree to that, then that is what pushed him over in terms of accountability, that it needed to be, right, you know, complete decimation over there. Dove?
Oh, just making a quick, I don't know what, I see something. What I see, you talk about the back of the neck and the stubbornness and the connection. I see tefillin, we put them not there.
It's interesting.
Someone what?
Yeah, it actually doesn't go on the neck though, it goes on the back of the head.
Yeah, but it's there.
It's in that area. Okay, yes?
So when you're talking again, like Doug says about the neck and this, somehow when you know some, as you said, you know, and then you still choose to do otherwise, that seems to resonate as like Yetzer Hara to me rather than just this neck thing.
Yes, it's not a physical thing, right? That is the struggle that we all have. I agree with that. Okay. Let's come for just a few. We have a little time left. There is a teaching that the number 10 figures prominently, right? We had 10 plagues. We have 10 commandments.
10 toes.
Right? Sorry?
10 toes, 10 fingers.
Okay, yeah. Well, actually, yes. Right? There are 10 sfirot. Yeah, there is a lot of that, actually.
Yeah.
That things break down into 10 components. There is, right? Now, there were 10 ma'amarot through which the world was created. I mean, you look back at Bereshit. Hashem says, and God said, let there be. And God said, let there be. And God said, let there be. The Gemara says there were 10. God said, let there be. The Gemara says, one problem, there's only 9. Vayomer Hashem. The Gemara answers, Bereshit, in the beginning, Bereshit is also a ma'amar, is also an utterance of creation. Right? And it's interesting that science has come around to the understanding that time only came about with matter. Right? So I believe the Vilna Gaon says, Bereshit is that now, or actually the Ramban says, Bereshit, now there's going to be time. Bereshit, in the beginning, means there's a creation of beginning. Right? Beginning is a function of time. Okay? But Bereshit is also a creation. Now, there's a teaching that with each step of creation, there was further obfuscation of God in this world.
Like a filter.
Right? Like a filter. There was a further removal of God's clear presence, involvement in this world. What the plagues did was they peeled things back one by one until we get back to that absolute clarity of God and the world. Right? It was the complete removal of ha'oref, of that stubbornness. And they go through how each one is aligned. We'll just look briefly at the last two. Well, let's look at the ninth. So the ninth plague was?
Profound spiritual and physical.
What was the ninth plague?
Darkness.
Darkness. Okay?
And immobility.
Yes. Right? It's the plague of Choshech. Now, that's going to be aligned with the second Ma'amar. If the first utterance was Bereshit, then what's the second one? Vayomer Hashem Yehi Or. God said, let there be light. Okay? So the peeling back of that, right, was coming back to the point of this absolute choshech, this absolute darkness. But it's very interesting, because we say that the or that was created then is not the light that we know of now. The sun wasn't up yet.
No.
Right? It was a spiritual light. It was this light that the sages say was put aside for the tzaddikim in the world to come. And the sages say over here that all the Jews had light. For Moshe Vatam, the Jews had light, that we had that primordial light. That's what came back to us. And that's why it was black for the Egyptians. Meaning, if something is so bright, what happens? You're blinded. You can't see. It becomes darkness. I remember in my teenage years going to a concert in Madison Square Garden. And I had seats in like the 8th or 9th row. Right? It wasn't a classical concert, okay? It was so loud, I could not hear it until the third song, when my hearing had been damaged and dulled to the point that I was able to make out what song they were playing. Until then, it was so loud, I couldn't hear it. My ears were literally ringing for the next couple of weeks. Right? When it's too much, right? The light was so much, the Egyptians couldn't see it. For the Jews, there was light. For the Jews who were not worthy, they all died. When was that? They all died during that plague. But let's go a step further, right? Makat Bechorot. Bereshit is the beginning. Now, Bereshit is in the beginning. And we say Bereshit because of Reshit. What's called Reshit? We discussed before. The Torah is called Reshit. Right? Yisroel is called Reshit. Right? Because of the Torah, because of Israel, meaning God created the world in order that there would be His message and those who would take His message and take His message into the world. Now, what is a Bechor? What does a Bechor represent? The firstborn, right? Now, it's fascinating. Look, I just saw this yesterday, Rabbi Foreman's site. Av is spelled a father's, Aleph, Bet. How is Bechor spelled? Bet, Chaf, Resh. So let's line them up. Aleph, Bet, Bet, Chaf, Resh. Aleph is 1, Bet is 2. Right? The father has a child, right? The parents, now they become 2. Now, what is the Bechor? 2. Bet. Chaf has a numerical value of 20. Reish has a numerical value of 200. So it goes 1, 2, 2, 20, 200. Right? What is the Bechor meant to do? Take that message of the father, of the parents, and multiply it. Bring it on. Right? Bring it forth into the next. Right? As it continues to go out. Right? That is what a Bechor is meant to do. Why is Yisroel called B'ni Bechori, my child, my son, my firstborn? Right? All the nations are God's children. What makes Yisroel the Bechor, the firstborn? It's not chronological. We're not the first nation.
Acceptance
right?
of Torah.
But Bereshit, right? We are meant to take God's, so to speak, and bring him into this world, to infuse this world with God. The same way that a Bechor is meant to take that of the parent and bring it forward, we are meant to take that of God and infuse this world with it. If Paro is fighting insistently, incessantly against this concept of Bechor, against this concept of godliness in this world, Ani Hashem b'kerev haaretz, ein kamoni ba'aretz, the three levels we discuss in the Psukim, I am God in the midst of the land, there is none like me, right? Shema Yisroel Hashem, Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. If he's fighting against this very Bereshit, then the final step to reveal that Bereshit is that his Bechor, and the Bechor of all the nation, that which you look to bring your ideology forward, will die. There'll be no future for your ideology, and that will bring about the release of B'ni Bechori, of my son, my firstborn. That is coming back to the Bereshit. And how does our Parsha end? And with this will end also. Look on page 363. The very last Parsha paragraph of this is, it shall come to pass. I'm looking on page 363 at the bottom there, verse 11. When Hashem will bring you to the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and your fathers, he will have given it to you. You shall set apart every first issue of the womb to Hashem. Set aside your firstborn. And every first issue, the firstborn that is dropped by livestock that belong to you. Every first issue donkey you shall redeem with a lamb or a kid, etc. Right? And you should redeem every human firstborn among your sons. Right? The very last thing is our focusing on Bechor, on the firstborn, be it of your children, be it of your kosher animals, even of the non-kosher animal, even of the donkey. Because this is going back, this whole series of Makot was a peel back to get to Bereshit. And Bereshit is the beginning for the purpose of God's understanding, God's presence here in the world. And that is why we have this focus on Bechor, 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 because that was the plague that completely peeled back the 10 levels of the creation, of the obfuscation, of the filters, like Dov said, and showed Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And we focus on that idea of Bechor, Bereshit, for that purpose, and of taking God and infusing the world. And that is our mission. That is our mission. The way that we act, the way that we speak to everyone, the actions that we do, the things that we don't do, is all meant to show, to be a manifestation, an example of godliness here on earth. That's to peel back to that Bereshit. Chai Rivka.
By doing this peel back in steps, it allows a pause, an opportunity to correct. If you did it from all at once,
Correct.
you know, it allowed this pause to correct, make corrections.
And that's very important.
Yeah.
In anything that we do, it needs to be step by step.
Step by step,
Right.
and to make corrections.
Right. Big changes last for a very short period of time.
Yes.
Right. 100%. Yes.
And the ultimate conclusion is verse 14. And it shall be when your son will ask you at some future time, what is this? You shall say to him. In other words, all this, your next obligation is the next generation.
Yeah.
Without that, there's nothing happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Beautiful. To pass that on.
I'm going to ask a feministic question.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to ask a feministic question.
Okay.
Why is it only Ben Bechor and Pidyon Ben? What about girls? They can also deliver, they can also spread, they can do the same.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. Certainly girls can and girls do, right? Let me touch on something else for a moment, okay? Right? The bracha that is made, Shelo asani isha, right? That men make the blessing, right? That I was not made an isha, a woman, right? So that offends. That some people are offended by that. Okay, Ruthie, we've had this discussion before, right? And the general explanation is right that as I've explained before, the idea that a woman makes the bracha that I've been made according to God's will, that the man is appreciative that he has the extra mitzvot, the woman is appreciative that she was created in accordance with God's will and doesn't need those extra mitzvot in order to connect. The man has all of these reminder mitzvot. Why? Because we're thick. We're a paros over here. We have that oref, right? We need right. For us, the crowbar is the way is the way that we understand something, right? Right. But nevertheless, Shelo asani isha. So I heard a very interesting take on it. You look at the world. You look at the world today. Right? In probably majority of the world. Certainly look at the world going back 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, right? Women, the females, are at a tremendous disadvantage. That's what society, right? Now, you look at the world today, right? Not in the United States, not in Europe, but go beyond there. What is the state of women in the world? I wonder if it's the majority of the world, right? Certainly a large segment of the world, right? The state of women is a very sorry one. Is a very limiting one. So therefore, someone made the point that the bracha of Shelo asani isha is meant for us to recognize the sorry state and to be sensitized towards that. So Bechor, now let me say two things. So first of all, right, who is throughout the world, who has been the one who's been able to go forth with the parents' teachings and really represent it? Right? Traditionally, it's really been the man. Right? That is the one who has had the ability to do it. There are different roles. Typically, the makeup, the emotional. The man is the one who goes out more on the limb. The woman is the one who's more sensitized and building the base. Right? I think there are basic differences between men and women. There are physical differences. There are physiological differences. There are spiritual differences, and that's where they have different spiritual needs. And there are emotional differences. And the one who's going to normally, and there are certainly exceptions, but the one who normally goes out and conquers, so to speak, is the man. So this term of Bechor, of taking that and pushing forward into the new horizons, into the new areas, that is typically being done by men. Right? The world has certainly changed, right, in a positive way. That everyone has the opportunities. And that's a very positive thing, that everyone has the opportunities. I think it was the president of Harvard who got himself into trouble when he pointed out that when it comes to certain studies there, right, let's say the engineering, right, and there are certain studies where he got himself into trouble for saying, I think, for stating the facts that the percentage of male female, right, in the humanities was high female to low male, and when it came to certain of the hard maths and the hard sciences, right, it was male. It was much more male than female, right?
So talking about the conquering of men, that men are more able to do it. So we were in Israel now, and we went to a lecture of a guy that is a news, not a news reporter, but he's a reporter, and he went like 4 or 5 times into Syria. He's Israeli, he has a foreign, passport, and he's going in and out, and he's absolutely insane. He's just living on the edge all the time. It's like absolutely unbelievable. So at one point he was at the Kurds area, and he was like 200 meters or 300 meters from ISIS.
Mm-hmm.
So
and he doesn't present as an Israeli when he goes.
No.
Okay.
But he uses his Itai Engel. He uses his name.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, he went into the Kurds area, and there's a love-hate relationship between Israel and the Kurds. But he was accepted very nice there, and he was introduced to a unit that is all women.
Yeah.
And he was told that actually the most that the ISIS are afraid of are these unit of women.
Right.
Because for them to be killed by a woman,
right.
he's not a shaheed anymore,
right.
and he's not going to go to heaven and find his 72 virgins. Right. So what happened is,
what did the virgins do wrong? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So what happened, it's really funny that we in Israel, in the Sephardic or the Moroccan kind of weddings, they do this sound, they this. So for them, it's during war. We do it in weddings, but they do it in war. So those girls, the soldiers' girls, are confronting them with this kululu, with these noises, and they run away.
We've discovered the secret weapon.
The army women.
You will not believe that's the magic thing against them. They know the magic weapon. They know that this women unit is approaching them, and they simply
They're out
run
of there.
away. It's like,
Okay.
so women.
That's the secret weapon.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
And these women they're not married for years and years. They're not getting married.
They're completely dedicated to
They are
to this
exactly
army.
like the men unit. There is there are soldiers for maybe life, unless they want it, unless they want to live. But their way of life is exactly like the men soldiers, Kurds. They're very same.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
This is the subject.
He's unbelievable. He actually went into Syria the very same day that Jay Scully went in.
Right.
And they met in Turkey and they became friends. So they went in the same day, but 2 kilometers apart from each other.
Right.
Jay Scully was captured and he wasn't.
Oh my.
Wow.
Oh my.
I was really insane.